Welcome, everybody. This is going to be a webinar about your conditional business license in the state of New Jersey, and you want to get into the cannabis industry. My name's Tom Howard. You can find me at tom@collateralbase.com. That's my email address. The name of the firm that I work for is Collateral Base. They're sponsoring this. Shout out to them. We're going to go over in deep detail your conditional application today. In a couple days, the state will begin a rolling basis of accepting 3 of their license types. They've called them in classes, and class 1 is cultivation, class 2 is processing, and I believe class 4, I'm not sure what the testing class is. Maybe the testing class doesn't have one. That will also be open for business on Wednesday the 15th. For the first 2 classes, if you want to have the right priority, you're going to need to apply in a conditional fashion. We're going to go over that. Interestingly enough, though, I want to give a shout out to headynj.com as they have profiled the most recent winner. And so the thing that I want to start with is some film. And by that, I mean, like, what are you doing? Well, we're going to study other winners so that we can model our team based on things that have already won. And that's what we're going to go over in our plan that we have. We have 2 plans. There's your compliance plan, 20 pages. There's your business plan, 20 pages. It's for cultivation. It's for a micro. And the reason for has to do all with priority, which we're going to get to in a moment. But first, I wanted to go over the most recent winner so that you can say, is my team like this? Who might I need to go get? So this is a Valley Wellness. It was the top NJ CRC pick for a New Jersey dispensary license. And there's the team. It's not a very large team. Your team doesn't need to be very large either. But she is a lawyer, educator, and businesswoman. Sarah Trent and her Middle Valley partners was the NJ Cannabis Regulatory Commission's top pick for the New Jersey medical cannabis dispensary licenses. They just handed out 30 of them. She has been working on this for 29 months. That's when they applied back in 2019. And if New Jersey is anything like Illinois, they're going to blame COVID for some of those delays. However, we can go over what we saw in Illinois in their adult use social equity round and apply those principles to what might be happening in New Jersey. But still, this gives you some perspective as to what the regulators were looking for. Let's go over her team. So she noted that on the application, Tim Wiggins played an integral role. He is now Senior Director of New Jersey's operations for Acreage Holdings. Wow. She had a written application. She hired an application writer. We're going to go over how to write applications in this webinar. Brian Blumenthal, and a consultant, Brian Staffa, and her attorney, Seth Tipton, which is a different Seth Tipton than Tim Wiggins, who was also involved in helping her. And then she said that she cold called 15 mayors. This is interesting in the sense that your ability to get this license may take longer than you are anticipating, but also might go in directions that you may not have foreseen. So she called 15 mayors to find out where her home community could be. You may have to start doing very similar things, or you probably already have. But she said that she waited 29 months to hear about the results of the process. And then she's gone on to take some training. You see a lot of training that's offered. But she was a lawyer, and I believe she was also a teacher, from what I want to recall from my previous read of this. But she had this huge team, and she wasn't a slouch, a lawyer, an educator, and a businesswoman was able to win this. Do you have a lawyer, an educator, and a businesswoman on your team? Maybe it would be good for you to do so. And we're going to go over the priority chart here in just a moment. I did think that she was a public employee as well. You see that very often in winners. Oh, no, that's Director of Acreage Holdings. What was her thing? She's active in the State Bar Association's Cannabis Law Committee. Like, I'm active in my State Bar Association's Cannabis Law Committee. It's what we do. And so it's one of those things that when you see how other winners have approached it, what are you learning from them? So go ahead and subscribe to like Hetty NJ. You'll probably see a few new magazines pop up. And now I just wanted to briefly introduce you to myself. Maybe you know me, maybe you don't. Tom Howard, CannabisIndustryLawyer.com. If you have been asking questions about your cannabis licenses hopes to the internet, you probably came by this page and you probably have filled out this type form. The new thing we've launched there is our knowledge section. So you can go there, and we have a new thing on New Jersey, specifically for what we're going to be discussing, the New Jersey Cannabis Business Conditional License Application. You can find it there and get what we're offering beyond the curtain of this webinar. We're going to go over priority applications now. For example, I believe am a 10B. Yeah, I would be down here. All other applicants for annual license ordered by first in time that, and then Microbusiness, I can't do that. So I'm not even a 10A, I'm a 10B. Microbusiness must be 100% New Jersey. And then there is the 1A, a social equity business ordered by first in time that have submitted a conditional license for a microbusiness. And so what we've created is a conditional license application for a microbusiness, a 1A. The only way a guy like me can get into New Jersey cannabis is if I partner with 1A and I play by the rules. And I could then have financial source agreements and management agreements, which have to be compliant. It's not the biggest trick in regulated, highly regulated cannabis is that you just follow the rules. And then you have to have enough capital to be able to afford the rules. I mean, you saw the winner. She had 3 different lawyers and consultants working for her, and she was a lawyer, what a team. Hopefully you do have local counsel, because local counsel will have a lot of membership interests in these licenses. I bet they will, especially if they partner with a 1A, and that local counsel can't be a 1A. And just because you're diversely owned, or you're female owned, or you're disabled veteran owned, that doesn't make you a 1A either. You can see here, it's right there. I'm going to pop myself out of here so we can focus more on the priority. I am, like I said, a 10B. 1A is who's going to get to the head of the line and always be processed first. So if you ever want to get into New Jersey, you should partner with a 1A. Otherwise, you may be in processing for a long time. I was at the Ganjier training. One poor soul had been in processing for a license for 4 years in California. And if I try to apply as a 10B, I'd be, not just retired, but like long dead until they do like, okay, now serving 10Bs. No, because if any 1A comes up, my license application doesn't move, right? The only people whose lines will actually move are probably going to be social equity businesses, first in time, that have a conditional license for a microbusiness. They're 1As. And you can say, oh, but I'm African-American owned, and I also am a female. Great. We've double stacked the 2As. Now we get back down into it. A 2A is the diversely owned. And diversely owned, of course, that means the minority owned, the female owned, or the disabled veteran owned. And then they still rank them as they rank all of them. So there's the A, the B, and the C. Submitted the conditional license application for a micro is the A. The B, submitted conditional application for a standard. And then finally, the C, have submitted a conditional license conversion application. So the conditional license conversion application is going to have to happen for either the standard or the micro. Now, why in the specifics of the actual cultivation license itself would you want to go for the micro over the regular conditional for the standard? Because the standard conditional, if they are converted and issued very quickly, and I bet there are well-capitalized, well-lawyered, well-drafted applications for a 1A or a 1B that are already ready to go. And then those are going to pursue the 37 cultivation licenses that aren't micros that would also include the ATCs and any conditional that converts. So between now and 13 months from now, that 37 will be hit. I don't know how quickly that 37 will be hit, and here's why. Processings take time. I don't know if the procedure for the review that the regulators are going to employ will be similar to Illinois, but they did mention that it's on a binary pass-fail. You have all the compliance, you don't have all the compliance points, which means that if you have all the terms and conditions that are found in the regulations and the notice that we'll be going over here shortly, in theory, it is perfect, and then it should be issued. But sometimes that perfection gets into softer skills and also financial ability and, of course, a community preference. So all of those things can take some time to demonstrate and document and evidence. So I would be very surprised if the commission doesn't use what they put in their notice and create a compliance drill, if you will, in the sense that you submit your application and it reviews it, and then it says something's missing, and then depending on how much they want to help, they could say this specific thing is missing, or they can couch it how Illinois did and say here's a list of what's missing, A, B, or C. And then you have to examine each element, even if it's there, just to respond to the regulators so that you're sure that you're compliant. That probably will be happening as well. I mean, they made the last round wait 29 months, and lawsuits were just all over the place. I think that we're going to have similar things, but they will be trying to avoid it and hedge it through their awarding process. So it's going to be really interesting to find out how this all rolls out. However, if 500 people apply in the next 2 weeks, do you have any idea how long that's going to take to determine whether or not you have a complete, compliant 40-page document? It will still take quite a bit of time. And then if you're in order, great. Now you have the 5-month window that you have to get everything else ready. And that takes more time because now the 40 pages aren't 40 pages anymore. You're going to have to draft the remainder 200 pages or something of compliant documentation so that your business is ready to go. Plus, you have to get the community on your side, and you have to secure that real estate location through the use of financial source agreements and perhaps also master service agreements or managed service agreements, depending on if I'll also see them called managed services and cultivation agreements, MSCAs. Depends on which jurisdiction you're operating under. They all have to be approved by the regulator. And so that is going to take a while. That's one of the reasons why when I see the 37 limit, it's like, okay, well, you might have everything else approved for your 10,000 square foot tier 1. And you just can't get issued that license done for another 13 months. But it might take 6 to 9 months. It was 29 months of license processing last time for the dispensaries. You think that 13 months isn't going to fly by that quick? It will. So you might as well apply however you want. But if you're going to apply as a 1, that's the way to do it. Whether or not it's a 1A, super front of the line, doesn't count towards 37, or a 1B, still super front of the line, counts toward that 37 until February of 2023. Either way, you're definitely going to need a lawyer, and you're definitely probably going to need a diversely owned business, because then what happens if you have 2 social equities that tie, right? 2 social equity 1As. Which one do you process first? Do you then look, well, it's first in time, purely first in time. That's it. So they don't have to then go look at whether or not you're diversely owned. Now, in theory, what if, and this could really probably only happen the first moment that New Jersey says we're open, simultaneous submissions. Only in that instance would you then maybe use the 2s to do a tie. But they're going to be ranking these applicants even at the municipal level. So it still may be a great idea to priority stack. And they explain more of these priorities. And now we're into the 2s, which, again, it's a complicated thing that they have. And then after the 2s, they have the impact zone businesses, now into the 3s. And then bonus points, whether or not they have gotten those because they have completed their entire application. And then all other applicants for a conditional license, and then social equity applicants, or in times that have submitted an annual application for a micro or have submitted an annual application for a standard. You see how much they are prioritizing this concept of the conditional license. They're prioritizing the concept of the conditional license to such an extent that you go from 1 to 6 if you try to go for the annual license first. They may never process that annual license. So you should go for the conditional. It's also much more flexible because then you just have to identify your real estate. You just have to identify it. You go like that one. I want that one. Ideally, perfect world, get that one. And then if you can't secure it, they have a procedure for you to change your address. So there you go. I mean, like, you don't have to have a lot of those real estate expenses tied up until after the conditional license has been awarded. And then also think about how more attractive as an investment that is for a liquidity partner that's out there that wants to get into the game, but is a 10B, or, here we are, a 6A if you're social equity for the annual, and they're the conditional. That income limitation on the conditional applies for the manager, but not for the non-manager. So you might have a lot of silent wealthy partners in the conditional area until they don't have to be conditional anymore. Still though, for 1A files, everybody stops and they go to the 1A and they do that. And then when those are off the plate, and they get to the 2B, well, the 1Bs. And then when those are off the plate, they get to the 1Cs, and then they get into the diversely. So how are they getting in, right? But that's the other thing. I can't give up 50% of my business. That's their method of thinking, as opposed to, I'd love to make somebody rich. That's great. You are looking for an impact investor. ESG, sometimes they also call them. You can find that right impact investor for liquidity's sake, give them a good return. It should, in theory, be a win-win. But, business people, right? Okay. And that is the priority. I also wanted to go toward the recreational use license. This is where we can get links to the rules. And it does say that there is no class for the testing laboratory. So on Wednesday, there will be a button right here. And then you go into a web form and you're applying. One of the things that you're going to need will be spelled out on these 261 pages of regulations, which the commission used in preparing this much shorter 32-page application notice, the notice of application acceptance for personal use cannabis licenses. This is telling you what will be on the application prior to providing you the application. And that's one of the reasons why we knew how to be able to start drafting the business and regulatory plan. And then on Wednesday, when we see whatever's in there, if it's any variance, then we can change accordingly. If it's in conformity and consistent, and kind of think it's going to be, then we just have to tailor for the specificities of the particular team. And so that's kind of nice customizations. But this is what they call the notice. And so you had to rely on the notice and then also the regulations. So you relied on these 290 some odd pages of materials in order to understand what will be going into the application so that you could create a compliant and complete application to get that binary yes score. Because if you get the binary no score, it will kick out back to itself. And I believe they explain that in this one. So they're going to be, let me just zoom down in here. License applications will be reviewed on a rolling basis until indicated otherwise, priority. And micro businesses will be prioritized over standard businesses in every category. In the event that they will stop accepting, at least 30 days notice will be provided. And so if they say, hey guys, we got to close, 30 days notice. And there's the specific February date. It's February 22nd of 2023 for the Class 1 licensed cultivators. And then they say any expanded ETCs and conditional license holders that were approved to convert to full annual. That's it. Eligibility and limitations and general application provisions. And the general application provisions, they tell you, like, how are you supposed to format these types of things here? You read the instructions, and the instructions say, there they are, 8.5 by 11. And all costs with the application and submission to the applicant shall be the responsibility of the license applicant. Fingerprints from my review of their forms of how much the things cost were actually kind of expensive, like $1,000. And then they go over their QA priority, and then they cover application priority again. It's essentially exactly the same thing. And then here's one: applications from entities that meet criteria for more than one priority status. That one, highest priority. For example, application from entity criteria is diversely owned and impact zone will be considered a diversely owned business for the purposes of application, since diversely owned are higher priority than impact. And then if you are stacking your diversely priorities, you'll be given priority over someone. So here it is. That you really need to understand. And this is what I think the kick-out methodology is that they described in Illinois. And here it is, me believing that they're describing it in New Jersey. After an application is received, assign for a completeness review. And if deemed complete, assign for scoring. Where an application exists in a higher priority group, with 1A being the highest and 10B the lowest, the application will be assigned for completeness review and scoring before applications in a lower priority. So that they are going to give you a completeness review. Well, what happens if you bonk on the completeness review? I believe they're going to give you another chance to be considered. Once an application has been scored, if it is deemed eligible for consideration of final agency approval, it will be considered in accordance with the priority group, 1A at the highest and 10B at the lowest. And interesting, testing will be a 1A. So this completeness review thing, I think this completeness review, in interests of lowering the barriers to entry for social equity applicants, I believe that they're going to give them more than one bite of the apple, because they gave them like 6 bites of the apple in Illinois. They rescored the app, and they rescored the app, and they rescored the app, and they rescored it. And so like basically everybody who applied made it into this huge lottery for the dispensaries. And then they were awarded points. And so the points in New Jersey appear to be more simplistic, all binary. Not all of Illinois' score was all binary. Now in New Jersey, it's all binary. So they do a completeness review. And if you check, you get it. In theory, you should be able to be awarded that conditional. And then the real work begins. Once you have that conditional, if you already have your FSA lined up, your financial sources agreement, and if need be, you have your master and your managed services agreement lined up. So you have a management company, a cannabis operator that can cultivate commercially or extract commercially, or retail and provide your team with the necessary training to get up and running by itself. Those are all available. They have limitations on the number of contracts that you can have. So like no one entity can have more than 7 financial source agreements. That means that there's not going to necessarily be like a bank of the weed, as a bank in theory would be limited to 7 loans. And then a management agreement can have 5. So if you are managing 1 grow and 2 dispensaries, then you have 3, you got 2 more. Where do you pick it? That's not that large. It means that there's a lot of opportunity for a lot of social equity applicants, because they'll be the ones that are reviewed first, and nobody can get too huge if you're only allowed to be a financial source to 7 teams or a manager of 5. Good luck on that franchise opportunity. Anyway, these are the things that are reviewed when creating the contents of the business plan and the compliance plan. So they have the mandatory requirements, and hopefully you guys have studied this instruction, because it's very important. You are now being asked to do exactly what they ask you for. So this is the conditional license real main hurdle that you have. The main hurdle on the conditional and why you would select it is to lower the barriers to entry of this cannabis market. How do you effectively do that? Here's one way. Proof that each owner of the conditional license applicant has, with decision-making authority, has, for the immediately precedable taxable year, an adjusted gross income of no more than 200 or no more than 400 if filing jointly with another individual. And talk about reducing the barrier to entry there. Now, if you are a qualified purchaser, or if you're more than an accredited investor, $200,000 individually a year. Without the asset requirement, and then also 2 preceding years. But still, if you're, so it's more difficult to become accredited investors than it is to become a conditional license applicant. Your team is going to need to be managed by regular people who make less than $200,000 a year. However, that doesn't mean that your financial source, your silent partner, who maybe you create a manager-managed LLC and the social equity is the 51% manager of it, and the wealthy person is the 49% member of it, not a manager, doesn't have any control, doesn't have any decision-making authority. That would be the method that you could use to get yourself all the way up to the 1B. And watch them go. I think that there are a lot of sensible, wealthy people that say, $1 million is still a lot of money, but we'll see. And we've set up our stuff for that exact thing. The only thing that we haven't done is like married the liquidity partner. So if you're a liquidity partner, great. Now, I could tell you about some wonderful social equity people that have contacted our office and are looking to meet people just like you. And so that's how a guy like me, who would just be in the priority 10B, can go all the way up to a 1B. I can't do a micro because I don't live there, but I can do a conditional. If I'm just a member, I'm not controlling the vote at all. Pay no attention to that person behind the clock. And so there would be a social equity business owner that is reviewed first, and then a silent partner, or in the sense of a financial source, up to 7 financial sources that are helping those social equity cannabis companies get stood up and get into the business. That's really the opportunity that New Jersey has presented. It's one of the most interesting, in my opinion, and most well conceived and thought out social equity applicants or applications or configurations of the regulation. I can't wait to see how it's going to turn out. I do think it's going to take a while. Okay, let's talk about Michigan before we get into the contents of the business plans and all that. Michigan has a rolling application period. Okay, you can apply, you get pre-qualified first at the state level, and it's very similar to New Jersey, where you then have to go to the municipal level and get approval from your community to be able to operate. Whether that hits into a lottery because there's just too much demand for a limited number of licenses set at the municipal level, we'll see. Probably going to happen that way. Anyway, that makes it something that you could say, well, how long does this take? And you could just go, well, the regulators, if you apply right now, they might get to it in 2 to 3 months, because that's how long it's they've had it open for a while. People have just been submitting when they get their team ready and together, and 2 to 3 months is about where they're at. And that's where New Jersey wants to get. But you're going to get a deluge of people applying. So it might, and New Jersey's is I believe, statutorily at 90 days or something like that. From my recollection of their webinar, and their webinar was great if you haven't checked it out. So they'll be processing this stack and working it down to be hitting that 90 days. That may take 6 months, and so maybe if you apply now, you might not hear about a completeness review for 3 months, 6 months, 29 months is what that woman waited. Our teams that won dispensary licenses in Illinois, let's see, it was about 18, 19 months. They applied in January 1st of 2020 is when it was due, back in the before times. And here we are almost at, 23 months later. So it wasn't as bad, wasn't as egregious. But it's not done. They've had their awards, they've had their lotteries, but they're still locked in litigation. So maybe it will be 29 months before it's all over. And we don't know if we're getting into one of these quagmires. So that's one of the reasons why these conditional licenses are great, because you don't have to lock up all the real estate and sign all the checks and make all the money appear until you've hit that conditional license. And that's when you need to get the full set of plans from a guy like me that can be like, here you go, this is the compliant, let's sit down and go over this. You're going to need to understand how your cannabis company works. You're in charge of the day-to-day. Like, if you're the social equity applicant, you're going to need to know how this works. You're in charge of the day-to-day. The passive guy, he will know how it works because he probably fronted the costs. Either way, I just wanted you guys to understand that you're getting this is a very exciting time in the journey, but there's going to be frustrations between now and being awarded the license because you are a social equity applicant. Okay, back into this. So I took these two things, and then the real application starts back on here, because these are the scored measured. And so they explain how these things will be. For each measure, an applicant shall receive full points if they meet the requirements. If the applicant does not meet the requirements, they get no points, including a failure to provide any information that is indicated in this notice as required to be provided. The applicant will receive no points for the response, and the application will be rejected and returned to the license to cure the deficiencies and resubmit, or if deemed not qualified, then just denied. And so you have to fill it out, turn it in, and then fill it out again. Isn't that great? So you might have to get kicked out several times. They may just continue to process them. And so like having it as complete as can be is very important, but you haven't had the state provide you with anything except for these next few pages that say that's complete. And so we use these next few pages to create completeness. Now, what does that mean? It means that you look at what they say on these, and then you do that. Here's one: the shall include a full business plan, including a minimum, a description of, and then you have this list: description of the proposed business, value proposition for consumers, overview of proposed financing for business, product and pricing plan, market analysis, and complete profile of the management of the license applicant. So there's a lot of flexibility in there. And there's interesting requirements that the business plan will have to comply with. Because if that business plan is going to say that you're going to do something in your plans that is in violation of those regulation requirements, the state, the commission, in theory, should reject you and kick you out. And then hopefully they say you violated this. They don't yet have a template, or they don't have their rubric yet that says these are all the requirements that go here. Illinois gave us one of those for one of their types of applications after 14 months or so. So they didn't even have it until after they started scoring it. See what I'm saying? So we'll see how this is going to be treated through the commission's way, but there's that. And they just say 20-page max length. And then here, for the regulatory compliance plan, overview of how the proposed cannabis business plans comply with the regulation for the license type sought. 20 pages. And then they have the points, 40 points, 50 points, and then plan to obtain liability insurance, one brief point, get a quote, and have a correspondence from one of these insurance brokers. They are out there, and they'd say, yes, if you get this, we will be able to provide you with appropriate liability insurance. Signed, our insurance company. And if you do that, you get 100 points. And then that unlocks you going to the conditional conversion method, where you have to do the environmental plan. That's 5 points. The safety and security plan, that's 10 points. 10 pages. And that safety and security plan, shout out there to Sapphire. I'm not sure what Sapphire's pricing is on that, but in Illinois, your plan needed to be 60 pages. Here, it needs to be 10. So not bad. Community impact, 2 pages. Workforce development, 5 pages. And then they give you a score, and you can see this in real time. See this? That says note, November 30th, 2021. This is cannabis happening with you in real time. The regulators are understanding it as you're understanding it. I don't mean if that kind of shakes your confidence. It shouldn't. It means that you can try to help them be as compliant as possible. That's really what you're trying to do. Conditional conversion license is not 200 points and has been corrected to 160 points, which is the total score required for an annual license. And then there's the annual license scored measures. Nobody should be drafting those. They should be drafting these conversion ones and putting them where appropriate. And you can see in these, they say SOPs for cultivation. And then they say subchapter 10 of NJAC. You see? SOPs for record keeping. And then they cite all these. SOPs for dispensing. They cite all those. So what do you think goes into your regulatory compliance plan? A lot of citations, and I think I'm going to change this because I You call it the New Jersey Cannabis Regulatory Enforcement Assistance and Marketplace Modernization Act. And I was calling it CREMA. And I have to do a Control F on that and change it to the CREAM Act. New Jersey calls theirs the CREAM Act. So, cash rules everything around me, man. Act, but that's really not what it is. New Jersey Cannabis Regulatory Enforcement Assistance Marketplace Modernization Act. And then the citation to that. And then our regulatory compliance overview. We're going to be complying with all of these things. These are the ones that we were particularly germane to the operations of the the operations of the licensed business entity. Not all of the regulations will be related to the operations of the business entity. Some will be actually on the commission. And so how does the commission supposed to be able to perform its job functions? And then some are complete prohibitions. For example, we use subchapter 14 for advertising thoroughly in our business plan. Thoroughly. Because your marketing strategy, before you have a marketing strategy, needs to be compliant with those advertising policies, you see? And we also talk about, this is how, maybe I'm not sure if anybody, we do have some comments coming in. And so if anybody has seen these before, like if they've bought any templates, if they've purchased any cannabis consulting product, you can see how it is dense. This doesn't dance like a business plan. This is a compliance plan. I guess it shouldn't dance. But then the business plan doesn't look very much different. The business plan is going to do these bullet points. What did the business plan specifically require? What did this business plan specifically require? And if you check in here, you'll see more gems because you go to the regulation chapters and subchapters that this final notice refers to be able to get your full business plan, including a minimum description of, and then of course, at minimum, a description of the proposed business, value proposition, product placement plan, market analysis, and a complete profile of the manager. So what do? You start out with a description of the proposed business. We're a social equity business that's diversely owned. Oh, that'd be great, to be a social equity business that's diversely owned. And then, we talk about our business objectives, our municipal approval, our business model. I don't want to just be belaboring everything. This is your company after all. And so what are your core beliefs? I mean, the stuff that traditionally goes into a business plan, the business plan that you would be using to show investors is different than the business plan that you're using to show a regulator your compliance, Yeah. Well, there really aren't any questions right now going on. So Sabrina was watching, and shout out to her. So put that back in there. We explain the value proposition of them. And then, of course, you do a lot of citations to the regulations that are there, but they didn't really have a lot of regulations. So the regulations that they had about the business plans, very often they would have to be about these management service agreements and financial service agreements. Now, I mean, I don't think you're going to need more than $2 million if you are doing a micro-cultivation after diligent review on it, unless you're going to try to go for outdoor, but the outdoor may provide a not in my backyard effect that some places in New Jersey just aren't ready for. I still think it's an interesting one. So I went with MSAs and FSAs, and then eventually, you have your cash flow analysis about, and then the physical plant of it had to do, it was a very interesting calculation for our revenue numbers for the physical plant restrictions that we had in there. And then our profits and loss forecasts. So we think that, they're going to be able to turn about 3.5 million if the prices are where they're at. And then hopefully if you use this types of systems, you'll be able to keep about 2.5 million. So it's going to be about a 66% profit margin for the cultivation operations. This is now there's some more, because that's business, your ability to figure out pounds per light or grams per square foot and get the right type of configuration for your facility. That becomes more important as you look at the regulations for your environmental plans and stuff. You have to see it in relation to those. But the ones that we are using are shipping containers because they are module and you have a quality and also an IPM limitation for them. So IPM, of course, is integrated pest management. And so if you have a crop failure, that crop failure would be limited to this 200 square feet pod. That's it. It can't get out. Plus finishing times for flowers. If we're trying to make Willie Nelson, that's not going to finish like Blue Dream. So those are business reasons, that you would choose that. But this isn't a business reason. This is a compliance reason. So this is like something that I think they're looking for more than the business reason. Your plans for banking, because they told you to get a bank. The IRC 280E mitigation plan, the FinCEN compliance plan, right? Your product and pricing plan, that was one of the things they required, wasn't it? And so like here, I don't want to say what your stock is going to be. So I'm like, guys, say what you want. And then this is for cultivation. This is not for extraction. That would be a different one. And then propose, how you explain what the price is currently in the market, how much you think you're going to be able to make it for, how you can watch out for your margin. And then we hit them with the advertising requirements, because that, your plans for marketing your business, make sure that your plans for marketing the business first comply with that, because it's a highly regulated industry. And they're also looking for people they can trust. They awarded it to that one lady who was a lawyer, businessman, and public servant. I mean, she was a triple threat. So we focus on the things that are actually prohibited. We also focus on the areas of the operational plans that would be germane to our license type in and of itself. So for our operating plan, these were required. And then so is the market analysis. Now, I don't know the full extent of this. I'm ready now to start throwing this around to my other lawyers and for customizations for other teams, so that we can, and again, this was, why is it kind of, wherever you see there's a citation like that? When I was doing my Illinois plans, again, they rescored that application several times. They kicked it out and they kicked it out. And so and here it looks like they don't just kick it out. They're like, sorry, and you could reapply. And so if you're just always on that 1A train, great. And so you could just 1A train it until you have a perfect one, and then start throwing it into 1B or 1C. Oh, good water. And then you might be saying well, man, I want it. Where can I get this? That is when you can go back to our cannabis industry lawyer page. I'm going to be sharing that. This is our knowledge center. This is what I'm going to be putting my knowledge, and I'll be able to have it available for sale and for curation, because these right here are the beginnings of my licensed application for a conditional license in New Jersey, which will be perfect over the lifespan of the license for these particular pieces of documentation, because it's good for 12 months. And then you can go to our New Jersey section right there, and you come to the New Jersey Cannabis Business Conditional License Application page, where you can see some more of me explaining the business plan, and you can buy it from the name of my tech company is Stumari LLC. And so Stumari LLC is handling the credit card processing on that, because, well, Square has been cool. Stripe wasn't. More on that at the New Jersey Cannabis Business Conditional License Application webpage. And with that, I'm going to see if there's any questions from the 16 to 17 people that are watching. If they want to apply in New Jersey, I hope that I can help anybody. That's why I started with this, saying guys, these aren't going to win it for you, but this will help you save a lot of time, and you'll get a lot of information from them. So I'd love to help. If you want more than that, then we have an hourly arrangement where we help you, and we write down our time, just more like a hybrid product here. We have our forms, and then we get paid for our labor. All right, I'm going to take a small break, and this break is going to be brought to you by Collateral Base, because it's 20 past the hour somewhere. Okay, let's do some questions about the conditional process, if there are any. Okay, what would your fee for the conditional cultivation license? Those those pages right there, they're ready to go and get customized for your team. So for $7,500, you get those pages and also access to our mastermind that comes with 6 hours of my time. You could front load that time and have me spend that time customizing and fixing those. But after that, 6 hours of time, man, ain't going to do it. I've been looking at this application. It's going to be long. And so I think that you'd probably have me spending dozens of hours, at $375 an hour, and then I'm trying to find my 1As or my 1Bs that I want to partner with and put together a hedge fund. So if you wanted me to put together a hedge fund for you so that you can create your own portfolio of 1A and 1Bs where you have a financial source agreement with them, that's going to be like 35 grand. And it's just really, what aspects of the licenses do you want? Now that I've gotten these done, I'll have to get the other plans done based on what we have currently. So as I sell these conditional plans, I'll hire some more team members and we'll put together the other plans, and then we'll work with our clients to ensure that they have a complete application at the highest priority possible. No. If the social equity partner doesn't work, the organization cannot be restructured. You would need to find new social equity talent. In the sense, you might want to have multiple members with social equity classes to be able to protect the management of the company. So let's say that you have the 50.1% comprised of 3 social equity members, and those 3 social equity members have a deal. And so if it doesn't go well with one of them, they're out, and then you're still in compliance. But that's how it works. You always have to have the social equity percentage be protected. So if you always have to have the social equity percentage be protected, you're going to have to do some corporate planning. We can help you with the corporate planning. We do that all the time. No, you don't have to wait for your municipality to approve. You can start applying, and then you just need to identify property and have it be compliant before your condition, for the purposes of your conditional to annual application. All right. So you have to have the real estate and the compliance and the municipal preference to be issued an annual license. So you don't think that you need to wait. Think that you need to put the right team together. Think that like that woman was triple threat. And so there are social equity females that are diversely owned. And if you got a right partner for liquidity for them, that would be the financial source agreement. And then we could set it up with debt on top of it so that gets paid off as well. That's my do it that way. I'm going to help people do it that way so that our companies can get into New Jersey. That's the only way that I think you get in. All right. Hopefully you all are going to apply. How many people think they're going to be applying in Jersey? If you are, drop it in the comments. We're going to be wrapping this up pretty soon. Thank you so much for tuning in to it. I hope that it was informative. We're going to be sending out some email blasts that go to that, and we'll be signing up some clients. Regarding Ernie, do you need to apply, or are you helping me apply? Ernie may be a 1B, but I don't know if he is. That's the interesting thing. The way that you are social equity has to do with a conviction. And so the records aren't all that great in certain jurisdictions where it may still come up on a background check, but does that qualify as social equity? These are questions that will be answered by the regulators, and then that would be their final administrative decision on the matter. And so you may have to appeal, or you may have to have the laws changed a particular way. For example, the social equity event in Illinois was an arrest, but only for an event that was subject to expungement. And Illinois can only expunge its own arrests. So they self-dealt that way. New Jersey didn't self-deal, but New Jersey did say conviction. And so let's take a little bit of time before we wrap it up to really address the social equity thing, because the social equity thing, whether you have it or you don't have it, it makes scores of difference. So like the difference between being like a 1A or a 1B and a 2A or a 2B, oof, that one's going to be no. Like, were you arrested for cannabis? Let's go to what makes you a 1A. That's if you're social equity. That's if you don't have it, you ain't getting it. Social equity business. Here we are. We'll go over it briefly before we wrap up the webinar. I kind of regret that I didn't start with it, Here it is. A social equity business meets a licensed applicant or holder that has more, that it meets at least one criteria, more than 50% of the ownership, hence 50.1%. The license or license holder is held by one or more persons, hence the ability to have a social equity quotient or class of shares for your company. That demonstrate one of the following criteria. At the time the initial application is submitted, has lived in an economically disadvantaged area for 5 out of the preceding 10 years. And that's an also, at the time the initial application is submitted, based on preceding year's income, a member of the household that has a household income that is 80% or less of the average median household income in the state, determined annually by the U.S. Census, or this is in the alternative. So you either have to have both of these criteria or this criteria here. More than 50% of the ownership interest of the license applicant or license holder is held by one or more persons who are eligible to be pronounced rehabilitated in accordance with NJAC 1730-7.12 paren E. And that is the background check for this particular, regulation on cannabis. And so everybody has to go through a background check, and have not been adjudicated delinquent for or convicted of, whether expunged or not, in this state, another state, or the federal government, and have been adjudicated delinquent for, convicted of, whether expunged or not, in this state, another state, or the federal government, 1, at least 2 marijuana or hashish-related disorderly persons offenses, or 2, at least 1 marijuana or hashish-related indictable offense. And as a result, we have to understand what adjudicated delinquent means and disorderly persons means. So from those, that's where a criminal lawyer and I will be able to go over and then ask the regulators, does this work? Because I don't want, you might have to apply, but then, see, that's the darn catch-21 that they haven't done yet, or catch-22. It would be nice if the social equity applicant could get a certification from the state prior to having to apply. Like, are you social equity or not? Let me see your docs. Yep. Or nope. Yeah. Lack of social equity. And Brian, you would need to partner. You need to partner. And that's a good thing to find. But then if you're going to be a partner, our business plan that we had, that we won for Illinois, it was pretty simple. It was a very simple team, similar to the New Jersey winner. There was a lawyer, there was a grower, and there was a social equity talent. And so that was exactly what they were looking for. And this social equity was the Illinois form of social equity. And that Illinois form of social equity may be exactly what the form of in New Jersey is, with the longtime resident of the area or the arrest. And then you have to document that. And if you get it, then you're great. And if not, it stinks. So I'm trying to find all the social equity ones that I can. And so in answer to Ernie's question, I would say he still might be. Like, I'm not sure if that was a disorderly persons offense. I'm not sure if that was adjudicated delinquent. My surety, the thing that I did the most when I was a lawyer prior to becoming a purely corporate lawyer in this very highly regulated industry that is American licensed cannabis, was a financial litigator for a very highly regulated, financially insured lending institution. So I was a bank litigator for companies that had gone wrong, and I'll go find all their money and take it back. And now I'm, putting all the money together and sending it out into social equity. It's much more fulfilling, but it's they're making it up as they go. And so, guys, I really did want to say thanks. I'm going to wrap this up. You're going to be getting some emails. If you want to get in touch with me on this, and you want these materials and to talk with me about these materials, email me at tom@collateralbase.com. I really appreciate you guys all stopping by, and I'll see you when it's 420 somewhere.